All right, it's not a function because the input 1 has 2 outputs. Now, I want you guys to list those outputs of 3 and 7. Right? If you can't list them, then maybe it is a function. Right? That's why I want you guys to be able to list them to make sure that that input actually does have 2 outputs. Okay? The next one. Are there any repeated outputs? Or sorry. Are there any repeated inputs? No. Does that is that a function then? Yeah, each input has exactly 1 output. So this one is a function because each input has exactly 1 output. Now, is it okay that -2 and +2 have the same output? Is that okay? Yes. Okay, that's fine. If your y values are repeated, it doesn't matter. It's just your x values. All right, now that's section 3.1. 3.2 is different. You guys need to be able to keep them separate. Okay, your test will also go in order. So just like this review guide, your test will be in the same order. To determine whether each function represents a linear or non-linear function. It's already a function. Okay, so you're not checking every input having 1 output. We already know it's a function. We already know that's true. We want to know whether it's linear or non-linear. Okay, if it's a linear and it's a graph, then it's going to be a line. If it's a table, then a linear function will have a constant rate of change. And if it's an equation, then we will be able to put it in this form. So the first one, we have 3 to the x power. Can x be in the exponent? Nope. So that's nonlinear. And I want you guys to just say, you don't have to say because x is in the exponent. I want you to be specific and say, not in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, that's why it's nonlinear. Now the next one is not in y equals mx plus b form yet. But can I put it in y equals mx plus b form? Yeah, and how do I know? Because there's just an x here. That makes it linear. It's not x squared. It's not x in the denominator. It's not x in the exponent. It's just x. So if I solved for y, it would be in y equals mx plus b form. So this one is linear because it's in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, next, we want to check, does this have a constant rate of change? So 0 to 3, you're adding 3. 3 to 6, you're adding 3. 6 to 9, you're adding 3. 1 to 2, you're adding 1. 2 to 3, you're adding 1. 3 to 4, you're adding 1. Does it have a constant rate of change? Yep, so it's linear. And you guys can abbreviate constant rate of change as CRC now, because I know that you know what it means. All right, so again, make sure you can differentiate between 3(1) and 3(2). Find the domain and range of each relation. Remember, domain is x, range is y. The reason they said relation is because they might not be functions. They might be, but they might not be. And determine whether or not the graph represents a function. So let's do that part first. So really we're checking, does it pass the vertical line test? Meaning, does every input have exactly 1 output? So does this one pass the vertical line test? No. So it's not a function because it fails the vertical line test. Now, if you want to say, you could say the input 2 has 2 outputs at 2 and 4. I'd accept that as well, but it's easier to just write fails vertical line test. How about this one? Does this pass the vertical line test? Yes. So this one's a function because it passes vertical line test. Or you could say every input has exactly 1 output. I would accept that as well. It's more specific, which is okay. All right, next, it doesn't say this in the directions, but you're going to have to do this on the test. Is this a discrete or a continuous domain? Discrete, because they're distinct points. Okay, distinct points is a discrete domain. These are connected, which means this is a continuous domain. Now, if you have a discrete domain, you need to list those distinct points. Okay, so for my domain, we're going to list all the x values. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't have to list 2 twice, because otherwise you'd be telling me the same thing twice. You'd be like, oh, 2's in your domain. Oh, 2's in your domain. But you don't have to tell me twice. Okay, so now let's look at the range. Let's look at the y values. 2, 3, 4. So again, you only need to tell me that 2 is in there once, that 3 is in there once, and that 4 is in there once. Okay, 2, 3, 4. Questions on that one? All right, this is a continuous domain. Anytime you have a continuous domain, you have to write it as a compound inequality. We want all of the x values between this number and this number. So we have to write it like this, right, as a compound inequality. Domain is x, range is y. Now, why did I do less than or equal to for my signs? Why didn't I just do less than? Yes, it's closed circles, exactly. It could be equal to because they're closed circles. If they were open circles, then we do less than. So you remember you need to go from the smallest value to the biggest value. So what is the smallest x value on your graph? What x value is this at? -3. Okay, what's the biggest x value of your function? No? 2. Yep. So all of the x, so you guys see from -3 all the way up to 2, those are all your x values. Okay, now let's look at the y values. Be really careful. You want to make sure you go smallest to biggest. A lot of people made this mistake on the quiz. So what is your smallest y value of this function? -3. And what's the highest y value of your function? 1. Okay, here's the highest y value, and that's at 1. So your y values go from -3 all the way up to 1. Okay, so questions on that one? All right, evaluate the function when. It's 3 separate questions. When x equals -2, when x equals 1, and when x equals 5. All right, what does that mean? Well, they told you what x is, so every place that you see an x, you are going to replace with that x value. So let's start with -2. So every place you see an x, you're going to replace with a -2. So g of -2 equals -5 times -2 plus 7. Remember that this side is just notation. No operation, no multiplication, nothing. It's just notation. Okay, so we're going to evaluate the right side using PEMDAS. -5 times -2 is +10, and +10 plus 7 is 17. So that means g of -2 equals 17. Now, why couldn't I just say that y equals 17? You technically can. It's just this is function notation, and that's what I'm testing you on, and it's more specific. It's telling you that when I plug in the x value of -2, I get out the y value of 17. So it gives you more information. All right, let's plug in 1. G of 1 equals -5 times 1 plus 7. Well, -5 times 1 is -5, and 7 minus 5 is 2. So G of 1 equals 2. And last but not least, let's plug in 5. Right? G of 5 equals -5 times 5 plus 7. So -5 times 5 is -25, and -25 plus 7 is -18. So G of 5 equals -18. Your quizzes on this went pretty well. Just remember, make sure you use function notation. Okay? All right, next one we have some absolute value. Okay, first let's start by plugging in x equals -2. So every place you see an x, replace it with a -2. All right, so how does this work? You do inside the group first, meaning like parentheses, but parentheses can be any group. So -2 minus 5 is -7. Then we actually take the absolute value of -7. What is the absolute value of -7? Yep. And then you still have this negative out front, so it's really like a -1 times a +7. So now we have f of -2 equals -7. I know you guys have to squeeze this in, sorry. We don't have a ton of room. All right, let's do f of 1. So that means we're going to replace the x with a 1. So 1 minus 5. So first let's start by doing 1 minus 5, which is -4. And what is the absolute value of -4? +4. So we have that +4 times the -1. Give me -4. Okay, so again, you're taking the absolute value, then you're multiplying by the +4. All right, last but not least, let's plug in 5. So f of 5 equals negative times the absolute value of 5 minus 5. Well, 5 minus 5 is 0. So the absolute value of 0 times -1 is just 0. Okay, so f of 5 equals 0. Now, for all of these questions, they gave me x, I replaced x, and now I solved for y. But they can give you y, and you need to solve for x. So let's look at that one. Find the value of x so that the function has the given value. Now, if it says find the value of x, then you don't know what x is, right? You are trying to find x. So at the end, you better have x equals. Okay, you don't know what x is. Don't plug in anything for x. We know that f of x is 15. So you're going to replace f of x with a 15. Not just the x, the whole left side. So 15 equals -3x. Okay? And now we have an equation where we're going to find x, and we get x equals -5. All right, again, g of x is +2. So we're going to replace g of x, so the whole left side, with a +2. So +2 equals 1/4 x plus 1. And then we're going to solve. So PEMDAS backwards. Subtract 1 first, and you get 1 equals 1/4 x. And then to get rid of a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So we'll multiply both sides by 4. And we get 4 equals x. All right, any questions so far? So again, they gave you the output there. All right, now they give me a graph. And again, it says find the value of x. So I better get x equals at the end, right? If I'm trying to find x. Now, it says f of x equals 4. So I want to figure out what is that x value when y equals 4. Remember that f of x is just a nickname for y. So find the y value 4 on your graph and figure out what the x value of your function is. What is the x value when y is 4? 0. Good. And I'm fine with you guys saying x equals 0. If you want to write it in function notation, that would be awesome as well. How about here? When y is 0, when y is 4, what is the x value of your function? 1. Yep, when y is 4, x is 1. If you want to write that in function notation, f of 1 equals 4, you can do that. Or I'll just accept x equals 1. All right, real life word problem. The local cable company charges $90 per month for basic cable. There's your 90. Plus $12 per month for each additional premium cable channel. Right? X represents the number of additional premium channels, and C of X is your monthly charge. So if you buy one additional premium channel, how much is that going to cost you? What is it? Well, $12 for one additional channel, so then you do 12 plus 90, which is 102. Okay. What if you buy 2 additional premium channels? How much is it going to cost you? Yeah, 2 times 12 is 24. 24 plus 90 is 114. Okay, so how many additional premium channels, aka X, we're trying to find X, right? Because they said X represents the number of additional premium channels. So how many additional premium channels would you have ordered if your bill was $114 per month? So they told you the monthly charge, aka your bill, was 114. So they gave you C of X. They gave you the output. So what you're going to do is replace the whole C of X with 114. Okay, because that's your monthly charge. So 114 equals 90 plus 12X. And again, we're trying to find X. So that makes sense that they gave me the output. So now let's subtract 90 from both sides. And we get 24 equals 12X. We divide both sides by 12, and we get X equals 2. So that means if it costs me $114 per month, I bought 2 additional premium channels, which makes sense, right? 90 plus 12 plus 12 is 114. So that makes sense. So what is your monthly bill if you buy 5 additional premium channels? So they're asking me, what is your bill, aka your monthly charge, so C of X, when X is 5? So let's replace X with 5. So I'm evaluating my function at 5. So 90 plus 12 times 5. So that's 90 plus 60, which is $150. So this is just telling me, hey, when you buy 5 additional premium channels, you have to pay a total monthly bill of $150. So again, they're either going to give you X and you find your output, or they're going to give you the output and you find the input. You find X. Okay, so that's the difference between these two. Here they gave me the output and I found the input. Here they gave me the input and I found the output. This is one of the most missed questions on the test because you guys have learned new skills, and that's why I think students can tend to get confused. Find the x and y intercepts of the graph of the linear equation. Okay, what does that mean? I want to know the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Most students try to solve for y and put this in slope-intercept form, but you don't have to. The slope-intercept form is only going to tell you the y-intercept. But we need to find both, okay? So what can you guys tell me about any y-intercept, and what can you tell me about any x-intercept? Yes, for the x-intercept, the y value is always 0. And what can you tell me that's the same for every y-intercept? The x value is always 0. Yep. Okay, we want to try to find y, and here we want to try to find x. Well, how do we do that? Well, if I know for the y-intercept that x is 0, let's plug in 0 for x. If you plug in 0 for x, you get 3 times 0, which is just 0. So now I have 12y equals negative 24. I divide both sides by 12, and I get y equals negative 2, and therefore my y-intercept is at 0, negative 2. Okay? Remember, your intercept is not a line, so do not write this as your answer. My intercept is not a line, it's an ordered pair, it's a point. Okay, so you have to write it as a point. All right, next, for the x-intercept, y is 0. So let's plug in 0 for y. 12 times 0 is 0. So now we're solving 3x equals negative 24. Divide both sides by 3, and we get x equals negative 8. So my intercept is at negative, oh, why did I circle that? Whoa, sorry. My intercept is at negative 8, 0. These are my two final answers, okay? Again, intercept is not a line, so we don't want to say x equals negative 8. Questions? Okay. All right. Find the slope of the line. Couple reminders. Slope is rise over run, which is change in y over change in x, which is the same thing as saying y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? Rise is up and down, which is y. Run is left and right, which is x. You have to remember that y is on top. Okay? Sometimes people just switch them, but you've got to remember y over x. So change in y is my rise, my up and down. So how far did I have to go to get from that point to the next point? You guys tell me. Yeah, to go down 2. Right? Since I had to go down, it's minus. So my rise is negative 2. Yeah, my run, I had to go to the right 5. And if you go to the right, it's positive. Now, if I say that my slope is negative 2/5, you need to look at your line and check. Does this have a negative slope that's falling? Is it downhill? Okay, good. That means we did it right. Okay. Next one. You got to remember it's change in y over change in x. So let's label our points. x1, y1, x2, y2. So we want change in y over change in x. All right, so let's do change in y first. y2 is negative 5 minus y1, which is negative 5. Over the change in x. 3 minus 2. Okay. So, coming down here, negative 5 minus a negative turns into negative 5 plus 5. And what's negative 5 plus 5?
0.
What is 0 divided by 1?
0.
Yes, if you forget, you need to type that in your calculator, and it will say 0. Okay. What if I got 1 divided by 0? What would the slope be? Undefined. Good. Yep, good. Again, you have to remember it's y over x. All right, next, we want to find the slope, which is the same thing as the constant rate of change. So let's just figure out what our constant rate of change is. We already know it has a constant rate of change. We just need to find it. So change in y is what? What are your y values changing by?
2.
And what are your x values changing by? Yeah, 4 plus 3 is 7. So there's my slope, 2/3. All right, graphing the linear equation. A linear equation is going to make a what? Linear line. Yep, all of these are going to make lines. Okay, you got that? You're going to have 4 lines. Okay, no points, no V's. You're going to have 4 lines. Then identify the slope, x-intercept, and y-intercept. Write all intercepts as ordered pairs. I am afraid you guys are going to forget to do this. So what I would do is I would go through and write them all as ordered pairs to begin with, just so you don't forget. Okay? So y-intercept is when x is 0. The x-intercept is when y is 0. Again, the y-intercept is when x is 0. The x-intercept is when y is 0. All right, do it again. The y-intercept is when x is 0. The x-intercept is when y is 0. The y-intercept is when x is 0. And the x-intercept is when y is 0. Okay, all right, now let's go. Back up to number 19. we need all of them to be put into slope-intercept form first. Y equals mx plus b. All right? Well, the first one is y equals x. That's actually called the parent function. It's the most basic function. Okay? So my slope is whatever is in front of the x, which in this case is 1. You don't have to write 1 over 1. I won't take points off if you do, but you can just say 1. Okay? My y-intercept is whatever you're adding. What am I adding right here? Exactly. I'm not adding anything, right? 0. So my y-intercept is at 0, 0. So let's make a point there. Then we're going to graph it in order to find x. So my slope is 1. So let's go up 1, right 1. Now, pause there. I said my slope is positive 1. Is this going to be a positive line?
Yes.
Good. You always want to stop and check. And you don't have to fill out the whole thing. Just do a couple. And then just draw arrows on both ends. Last but not least, we'll figure out where is the y-intercept, or where's the x-intercept, sorry. What point is that at? Yeah, is it okay that it's the same as the y-intercept? Yeah, absolutely. All right, slope. On the next one, this one's also in y equals mx plus b form already. Yeah. Yes. All right, so slope is whatever's in front of the x. In this case, negative 2/3. I wouldn't do that. In case I made a mistake in Skyward or missed something. Are those assignments?
They're ones from like a unit ago. I think it's also the old assignment guide.
Just keep them in case I made a mistake. And like, yeah, just keep them. Yeah, don't throw anything away in case I made a mistake in Skyward or Google Classroom or whatever. You know, if you're like, I did that, Miss Kinsel. And I'm going to be like, okay, well, then give it to me. And if you're like, I can't, I'll be like, well, then you didn't do it. Right? So just in case I made a mistake, just keep them. You can leave them at home, too. Okay? All right. So my slope here is negative 2/3. My y-intercept, right? My b value is plus 4, so my y-intercept is at 0, 4. So let's start by plotting the y-intercept. Go up 4, and then we'll use the slope to graph the rest. So it's a negative slope, so we're going to go down 2 to the right 3, and then you want to pause there. Is that going to give you a negative slope that's falling? Yes. So then I know I'm graphing it correctly. All right. Where's your x-intercept at? That's 6. Paige, can you take your review guide back on? Just check it as we're going over it. Just make sure you did everything correctly. All right, it's at 6, 0. Make sure you guys got it 6, 0. If you didn't, it just means you use the slope, graph the slope wrong. Again, my negative slope matches my line. It falls from left to right. All right, next one. This is called a constant function because anytime x equals or y equals a constant number, we call it a constant function. If it's a constant function, it's going to be a horizontal line or a vertical line. In this case, x equals negative 2, so what type of line is it going to be? Vertical. Vertical goes where? Up and down or left and right? Good, up and down. So a lot of you guys did this on your quiz. Is that a vertical line up and down? No, that's a point, right? You gotta actually make the line. So make the vertical line. So first of all, let me ask you, is this a function? Does this pass the vertical line test? It's a vertical line, so if the input negative 2 has many, many, many outputs. So if it's not even a function, what is the slope? Yeah, it's not even a function, right? So the slope is undefined. Now, if you forget that, look here. Vux, V-U-X. U stands for undefined. Slope is undefined. Now, this one can be a bit tricky. Does this hit the y-intercept or y-axis anywhere? Does it have a y-intercept? No. So let's erase this. What is the y-intercept? There isn't one. So I need you guys to write none. Please don't leave it blank, or else I'm going to think that you don't know what to write. And I don't know whether you know that there is not one. Okay, so don't leave it blank. Make sure you write none. And then the last one, x-intercept, where does it cross the x-axis? -2, 0. Good. Now, real quick question. If it was y equals 3, that would be a vertical line at 3. And what would the slope of that be? 0. Okay, because y equals is a horizontal line with a slope of 0. Okay, so yeah, that's just a little reminder. Last one. It's not in slope-intercept form, so let's put it in slope-intercept form. How do we do that? We solve for y. Okay, so let's move the x term to the other side by subtracting 2x from both sides, and we get -3y equals 12 minus 2x. Solve for y. Divide both sides by -3, and we get, I'm going to write it down here, y equals 12 divided by -3 is -4, and -2 divided by -3 is what? But what's a negative divided by a negative? Yep, so positive 2/3 x. Okay. So your slope is whatever is in front of the x, which in our case is positive 2/3. So my slope is 2/3. And my y-intercept is the b value, which is -4. So let's make a point at 0, -4 for the y-intercept. And then let's use the slope to graph. So I have a positive slope. So my line should go this way, right? Positive slope is going to look like that. So make sure when you graph, that's what it looks like. So positive 2/3 rises up 2. Run is to the right 3. Okay, is that going to give me a positive slope? Yep. So I can go down 2 to the left 3, and then just plot a couple more points. We need the x-intercept, so there we go. There's my line. Where does my x-intercept end up being? Good, 6, 0. Good. Woo! All right, we have 2 absolute value functions left. If you pull out your calculator, if you do not have a calculator, grab one of mine. And then gold students, if you guys have a calculator, grab yours. Oops. All right, so calculator. Actually, let me talk about this one before we use the calculator. How do we start these problems? Find the vertex. Yep. Let's start by finding the vertex. So take the inside of your absolute value symbols, which is x, and set it equal to 0. And that's what goes in the middle of your table because that's the x value of your vertex. We need to get the vertex in the middle of the table. All right, so that means we're going to graph from -2 to +2, right? The whole purpose of doing that is to get the vertex in the middle. So let's actually do this one by hand, and then we'll do it by the calculator. So let's plug in -2. 4 times the absolute value of -2 minus 9. So that's 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 9 is -1. All right, let's plug in -1. The absolute value of -1 is +1 times 4 is 4. 4 minus 9 is -5. 0. So 0 minus 9 is -9. Okay, 4 times the absolute value of 1 is 4 minus 9 is -5. And 4 times the absolute value of 2 is 8. 8 minus 9 is negative 1. Now, if you do not get symmetry here, then you made a mistake, and it's probably this point that you made a mistake. Okay, you didn't get the vertex in the middle. Your points might not be wrong, but you didn't find the vertex, and we need points on both sides of the vertex in order to make a V. Okay, absolute value is always going to make a V, not just a line. So my vertex is at 0, negative 9, which is the point of your V. So let's plot these points. Left 2, down 1. Left 1, down 5. 0, down 9. And then I just use symmetry to graph the last 2. And there's my V. So again, the vertex is the point of the V, which is at 0, negative 9. Domain in this class is always going to be all real numbers. Range is talking about your y values. All of your y values are above or below? Above, so greater than or equal to what y value? Negative 9. And it will always be the same y value of your vertex, right? They're all above or below the y value of your vertex. So y is greater than or equal to negative 9. All right, next, I'm going to show you how to use your calculator to graph the absolute value function. If you don't have a graphing calculator, it's no problem. Okay, you just do it by hand. It takes a little more work, but you can still do it by hand. So go to your graphing calculator, hit y equals, and we're going to type in the function. So we want negative, which is right here. You don't want to type in the minus sign. You need the negative sign, or else it will tell you error. There's 2 different ways to get your absolute value function. So far, I've told you guys you can hit math, arrow to the right, and hit enter. The other way is you can hit alpha. So you can hit alpha, window, and then hit enter. But that only works on updated versions. It doesn't, I don't know if it, I'm not sure if it'll work on the TI-84s or not. It will definitely work on the new ones, the CEs. All right, now let's type in x minus 3. So here's the x next to the green alpha button, minus 3. Then we need to get outside the absolute value symbol, so we're going to arrow to the right, and then we need to type in plus 5. So plus 5. Everyone get that typed in? Caitlin? You know how to plug this into the calculator?
I really don't. That's why.
Oh, well, you're not going to learn by not doing it. So grab a cup. Okay, well, you can do it by hand if you want, but try to learn using a calculator so that you have it as a resource. You definitely aren't going to learn if you're not using one, so just try. All right. Now we want the table. So second, then hit the graph button, which will give you table. Now, we said, oh no, we didn't even say. The vertex is going to be at 3. So there you go. You can see the vertex, and then you see the symmetry about the vertex. Okay, so actually what I suggest doing first is take the inside of your absolute value symbols, which is x minus 3, and set it equal to 0. Solve for x, add 3 to both sides, and now you put the vertex in your table first, then I suggest graphing it. And let's just confirm, was our vertex at 3? Yes, our vertex was at 3, 5. So that's good. That means we did it right. Okay? So here's the values that we want. From 1 to 5, we have 3, 4, 5, 4, 3. So let's plot those points. Right 1 up 3, right 2 up 4, right 3 up 5. There's my V. The vertex is the point of the V, which we usually put in the middle. Well, we always will put in the middle of our table, which is at 3, 5. I'll pause for a second. Sorry. And then my domain is always all reals. And the range, your y values are above or below?
Or not below.
Nope, they're all below, so less than or equal to what y value? Yeah, they're all less than or equal to 5. You guys can see that, right? 3 and 4 are less than or equal to 5.